Once upon a time, in the Netherlands, in the 1970s, there was, and still is, Hindenburg Electrotechniek. And here is Gerard Hindenburg, who is the CEO. He's the man who owned the company. His parents gave him the company which they had owned, saying, Gerard, son, you can own the company, and all we want you to do in order to deserve that we're giving it to you is to come up with a management system that's better than top-down autocratic management. We would like it to create a harmonious organization based on the values of effectiveness, transparency, and equivalence of voice. And he said, okay, Mom and Dad, and so he designed it. Took him a while to figure it out, lots of feedback, trial and error, trying things to see if they worked. Finally, about 2 years into it, the company is working. The general circle, if it's a company, is called the company circle. We could call it the general or the company. Who knows what it's called in the original Dutch? This is just how John Buck, who wrote the book, co-wrote the book, describes it. Okay, so here's Gerard. He is a member, he is the employee chosen by the board, but probably because he owned the company, he chose the board. But sometimes, well, you know how that works. In this case, he chose the board. 2 representatives to the board. Well, you can have as many representatives to the, quote, next higher circle, unquote, than you want. So they had 2, let's say. I'm not sure they did. Okay, over here is 60 welders and some other circle. I don't know what all they did. What does this company do? It does electrical creation for business and industries. It makes electrical circuitry, cabinets, designs and installs whole entire industrial level electrical systems. They did that then, they do that now. Okay, this is the electrical circuitry department, and here's Jan. That's really his name too. Jan notices this huge thing that's going on in the company. What is it? The Dutch shipping industry was the biggest industry of creating ships in the world, so naturally their 60 welders were needed to go into the hulls of ships and weld things in there to hold and manage the electrical installation for the whole ship. So they needed welders. Why welders? Well, because it was steel plates in the bottoms of these ships. But the Indonesian shipping industry is becoming ever more competitive with the Dutch one in the 70s, and after a while it surpasses the Dutch shipping industry, and more people are getting their ships from Indonesia, not the Netherlands. And so the company of Hindenburg Electrotechniek is losing business, and it's paying the salary of 60 welders, and they're not in there welding, they're in there doing like this because they don't have welding jobs. So the board of directors decides that they are going to lay them all off. They said, we don't need welders anymore. That's 60 salaries going out of our company, so we need to lay them off. So they decided to do it in the board. Gerard Hindenburg told the company circle, the general circle, the operations leader of every circle told their circle, including the welders who now knew they were going to lose their jobs, and including the electrical circuitry. And here's Jan. He's making electrical cabinets. I don't know what that is, but he was making them. And so he's nowhere near there. He's here, right? But he happens to know that they have an emergency fund of money. Emergency fund. How does he happen to know that? Well, they all know that because they all know everything, because they've got transparency. And in this emergency fund, and I'm going to make a G, because I think they didn't have euros in the 70s. I think they had Dutch guilders. And I'm not sure of that, but I'm pretending that's what they called it. Would you happen to know, Alex, what they called their money in the 70s in the Netherlands? No. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm going to call it guilders, because I just must have read that in a book somewhere. Okay, so Jan says, well, wait a sec. We've got this emergency fund. So he makes a proposal in the policy meeting of electrical circuitry. In the proposal, and I'm going to make it look like a rectangle as if it's on a piece of paper, is that we use the emergency fund to fund the welders to go get training in how to be salespeople so they can sell all the other services of Hindenburg Electrotechniek, period. And this is how we measure and evaluate if that worked well. And these are the dates that we measure it. And the electrical circuitry circle considered the proposal through consent decision making, and they modified it a little bit, because that's what you do when you're doing consent decision making, as you will see. Okay, so then the representative decides to take it to this next, quote, higher circle. I don't even know what that circle did, but let's pretend that they're doing something significant. So the representative says, come on, Jan. So Jan goes to the meeting. He goes over to this meeting. Hey, everybody, this is Jan. Our circle has this proposal. Did he say it's Jan's proposal? No, he said it's our circle's proposal. This is our circle's proposal. It was created by Jan here. Hi, everybody. Hi, Jan. And so we would like to ask this circle to please consider this proposal, and if you consent to it, we'll take it to the company circle. And they said, yeah. And then they changed it a little bit. And then they took it to the company circle, which is like the general circle. And so the representative of this, who goes to the company circle, says, come on, Jan. Okay. Hey, everybody. This is Jan. Hi, Jan. Jan's from electrical circuitry, and they created a proposal which our circle modified a bit, and here is the proposal. And we want to know if we can spend the emergency fund to help the welders get new training, in which case we don't have to lay them off, which will save the day. And they said, yeah, okay. And they considered it, and they modified it a little. And then after they finished modifying it, they all said, yeah. Yeah. And then, so then the representatives took it to the board. Come on, Jan. Hey, everybody. This is Jan. He works in electrical circuitry. The electrical circuitry circle, and then the da-da-da circle, and then the company circle came up with this proposal, which here it is. And we want to take the emergency fund and help train the welders so we don't have to lay them off. And they must have modified it a little, I'm guessing. And they passed it. And Gerard Hindenburg takes it to the company circle, and that operational leader takes it to that circle, and that operational leader takes it to the welders, who say, yay! However you say that in Dutch. Maybe it's ja. I bet it was yes, or hooray, or bravo, or something. Okay. Now, the welders probably knew it as soon as it happened, because they were standing outside the door of the glass listening through the wall, probably. Plus, they probably had the grapevine going all throughout. But it saved the day. This took about 3 days. They just had special meetings in order to consider this. And all but 2 or 3 of the welders wanted to do this. The other welders went ahead and got their severance pay and didn't stay working for the company. All the rest got out of their heavy welders' hats and welders' zipped up one-piece overall things with the little pieces of molten metal all over it and acetylene torch stains and scorches, and put on a 3-piece suit and a tie and got a briefcase and went out there and sold the services of Hindenburg Electrotechnique. And the company saved the day. The board of directors made a decision that saved the day. This circle made a decision this circle made a decision. Jan saved the day. Jan saved the day. Now, they went through all of their natural and normal sociocracy practices, but it was at that point that Gerard Hindenburg knew this worked. Because a good idea can come from anywhere. And it did, and they did. Voila. Yay. So, any comments or questions about that? Jackson, and then Alex, and then Paul, and then Rains.
Is it fair to call this a hierarchical system?
Yeah, and it's also fair to call it a circular hierarchy and a nested hierarchy, like the hydrological cycle. Because the idea came from here, and then the idea went there. And so it kind of moved around, because we have a flow. The flow of information, the flow of decisions, the flow of ideas, the flow of consent. It was being consented to each time. Somebody said to me in a workshop, well, what if they didn't want to do it? Did they impose it on them? They were feeling indignant for the poor welders who had to wear suits. And I don't know the answer. I assume 57 did and 3 didn't. Okay, so Alex, you had a question.
Yeah. So if it becomes the proposal of the electrical circuitry, why then does Jan join in to go to the next circle?
What's the reason?
Under what circumstances is it possible for people from a lower circle to go to a higher circle?
I'm not exactly sure why, but I think it was to respect and honor his good idea and to demonstrate to everybody this is how sociocracy works. But I don't really know.
But at no point did they say this was originally his idea.
Oh, they said it all throughout. Didn't you not hear me?
Okay, because in between you also said this is the proposal of the electrical circuitry.
And that, well, because it was by then.
Yeah, okay.
Jan proposed it to them and it became their proposal. And then electrical circuitry proposed it to this, whoever they are, and it became theirs. And then it went to the company general circle and it became theirs. Then it went to the board, it became theirs, because that's how that works. Nevertheless, Jan was being honored the whole time. Okay? They didn't have to do it that way, but they did. Okay, let's see. We had Paul and then Rains and then, okay, well, we'll just work our way around.
I had two questions. One is, when the proposal reached the company circle, you then drew it as going to the board. But wouldn't it simultaneously go to all of the functional circles?
No?
How do you direct traffic?
The board is higher than the general circle in this particular.
Yes, there's a thing in sociocracy called a top circle. I'm going to show it to you in your handout booklet in a minute. Intentional communities can get one if they want to. Businesses almost always have one. They're outside advisors who do even longer long-term planning than the general circle and who have some representatives from the organization and often a CEO if it's a company or a nonprofit. If it's an intentional community, they probably don't have a CEO, but they could if they wanted to, and some do. And the outside folks provide outside input about the things that are their specialty. Sociocracy trainer, permaculture designer, lawyer, accountant, local person who knows a lot about something or other. These outside experts care about the organization and want it to succeed and thrive. That's why groups have a top circle, if they want to. Don't have to, but they do. Okay, so I can't remember what your question was.
Well, I thought when the proposal hit the general circle that it would go to all the functional circles.
Well, it's just what Mickey said. This is higher.
Okay.
It would get reported on when the representatives went back to their circles. They would be able to share what happened, but those circles didn't have to approve the proposal.
Yeah, they get the information that this is all happening, but they don't have to approve anything.
So I think, is your question, Paul, about consent?
Well, it's just kind of flow. I mean, she just showed it going over to one of these circles.
What should it
board
have done?
looks
Say
like
it
a
again.
functional circle, but it's not.
The board is not a functional
Yeah,
circle
the board
in this
is,
case.
yeah.
It's different than the other models she's drawn
Right.
in the past.
Right.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
board,
Yeah, the
in this
board is
case,
not a functional
above,
circle.
Okay.
Actually, it's hovering above the system. It's not.
Okay.
Let me show you how they draw this when they're teaching this to businesses. Are you ready?
In your book.
Board, CEO, managers, supervisors, employees. The classic rake diagram of higher and lower hierarchy. And they just start drawing circles. They call them higher and lower. They have long-term planning. And they make long-term decisions. What? They impose their will on the company? No, they can't possibly do that. The company has its representatives in there. They'll tell us if this long-term planning proposal it has things wrong with it, as we will see with 6 good reasons to object. Okay? But I never draw it like that because I don't want to drive my friends crazy who would run screaming from the room if they thought it was hierarchical. It's a circular hierarchy, as you can see. See? Okay. Any other, let's see, there was more. There was Mickey and someone else and then Rains.
Like, kind of the devil's advocate or whatever, like,
That's fine.
to me, the electrical circuitry circle has a very particular domain and aim that has absolutely nothing to do with the welders or the emergency fund. So is there something, like, if that had come up in the electrical circuitry, I might have been the wet blanket in the room that was like, this isn't our place to make a proposal about this because it's not in alignment with our...
Well, you wouldn't have been a wet blanket. You would have done exactly the right thing. Do you notice what the electrical circuitry did? They didn't consent to the proposal of the whole company. They consented that they would give it to their representative to take to the next higher circle.
Okay.
And they knew that it was bigger than their circle, so they consented to take the proposal to the next higher circle.
So they probably like consented, like at first they were probably like, let's have a discussion about this thing, even though we all agree it's outside our normal purview.
Well, they might have,
Or
but
like-
they'd had to get permission from everyone to have a discussion,
Right.
which would have a time limit on it. And that's not really how you do consent decision making. There really isn't discussion. Unless somebody proposes it and we all agree, but otherwise there isn't. The fallback position, the default is we don't discuss. We just go through the 6 steps, as you will see. Okay? So that's why it went like this. Because we're not consenting to it. We're not consenting to it. We're not consenting to it. We're consenting to send it. We're consenting to it.
So let me make sure I understand. So you're not even discussing it either. There's just somebody in the group who says, hey, I have this good idea. And the group says, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. It's not really appropriate for us, but let's give it to this group.
But they might have modified the proposal because maybe they saw ways to make it better. Because of the 6 good reasons to object, as you will see. So that's why it went in that rather circuitous route. And as you can see, Jan, the electrical cabinetry guy, has nothing to do with welding. But he cared about them. And that's the point here. A good idea can come from anywhere. Okay, Jackson.
Is there a reason Jan didn't just go to the welders and say, I got this idea, you should propose it? Or could that happen?
I imagine he could have done that, and they might have then proposed it. But he was just following the sociocracy ways you do it.
And he was only in the electrical circuitry.
Because this is a company.
Right.
Not an intentional community where we're volunteers. We might be in more than one circle, which we always are in communities. He was basically doing his circuitry job, and he just talked to his circuitry circle because that's where he's empowered to do that. There's a flow of what would we call it? Flow of how ideas flow around. And he just followed that. Could he have walked over to the welders, knocked on the door, flicked the lights to get them to stop all that noise so they could then hear him, said, hey, y'all, circle up. I got an idea for you. He could have, I suppose. But he's just following the sociocracy structure. Any other questions? I think we have more. Okay, Rains, you had one? Oh, Lynette?
The electrical circuitries group that they were reporting to, they had a chance to say whether or not they thought it was a good proposal to pass on. But those other people didn't have anything to say. The other circles, the other functional circles in this example didn't have anything to say about whether or not that was a good proposal to send to the board.
They did have to say. And the reason electrical took it to this one is if we can imagine electrical circuitry as a smaller circle off of this one, because I don't know what their company was or is like. I don't know what this would have been. But it's something that has everything to do with electrical circuitry. These are their folks that they're in charge of.
So how about those other, like the circle that links? Okay, so I get how it went from I think I understand how it went to the board, and then the board decides. But there are other 3 functional circles.
These?
Yes, right.
What?
So it's the emergency fund seems like it affects everybody in the
It does,
company.
right.
And so how are they represented in this process?
They are, and someone in this room will answer that. How are they represented? Lauren?
They have representatives and operations leaders from each of those functional circles in the general circle,
Okay.
which
So-
decided to take it to the board. So if those functional circles had interests that weren't served by the proposal, they would have had a representative to speak up on their behalf in the general circle.
And would have brought back to their functional circle?
Well, they would have brought from their functional circle those interests in the general circle when the proposal was discussed. And the operations leader would have been able to report back to the functional circle what happened.
So I guess then, very good, I'm following you. So then the functional circle the other functional circle that, maybe I'm in the one next to it, the left one, yeah, that one, fine. So I'm in that one and I object, and my representative takes it to the general and expresses that, objection. And
then we modify the proposal.
modify the proposal, okay. And then it comes back to my circle, again, my functional circle.
There's no reason for the functional circles to vote, like to consent directly, because otherwise, what's the point of the general circle? The general circle is to minimize the number of people who actually have to consent.
What she said. Exactly.
The representative what they'll be keeping in mind are the specific domains and aims of that circle, more so than any particular person's opinion or objection. If they have an objection, it has to be related to the domains and aims.
But you really wouldn't have had a chance to object, you being this blue person here. Why? Because it didn't really come to your circle.
Right.
But what happened is when the general circle observed this proposal that came from there, your representative knew exactly how it would or wouldn't impact your circle negatively or beneficially.
I see.
Now, your circle, actually, your circle's in charge of welders, but so I should have put you here to make your point better.
My example, I was, down there.
Okay, fine. But the point is, oops, I made this all backwards, didn't I? Your representative would have known, and who chose the representative? You all did. Would have known what to say about how the proposal that came over from here would negatively affect you, if it would. So then we would modify it so that it would not. And you're going to learn a lot about this when we get to consent decision making.
Thank you.
Sure. Did you have one, Rains?
A, yes, it's a Dutch builder, and B,
Ding, ding.
that's great. And B, the top circle is a concept that I've not seen yet mentioned implemented in communities. I feel like it's one of the greatest potentials of sociocracy to really weld together the community's movement and get communities helping and supporting each other and getting past where just us to, there's help, there's guidance, there's learning and sharing with each other. So I'm hoping that as you take this home, you'll prioritize that.
Great, thank you.